Hey guys, Coach Michelle here with you today talking about eating humanely and ethically. And this is going to be what we're chatting about for the next hour, just under. And the purpose today, there are actually a couple of purposes. And mostly it's just to give you the tools and information that you need to make decisions based on your values. Okay, so it's not to scare you or gross you out, because some of this stuff, it can get pretty gnarly. And I'm actually going to do pretty PG rated version. I'll give you a heads up on the one section where I maybe go into a little bit more detail, but I'll give you resources to look into more on your own if you have the stomach for that. Okay, like I mentioned, this is not to force values upon you. Okay, it is to educate you on the different issues that are out there surrounding production of our meat and dairy and those kind of products. It is to give you tools to read and understand product labels. So just like we talked about last week, and like we talked about with your just general label reading and shopping, there's a lot of clever marketing out there. So we'll kind of talk about what some of that is and what it means, the different certifications mean, so that you can apply whichever level of certification you want based on your values. Okay, and we're going to give you some resources at the end, and that's so that you can do more research if you'd like. Like I mentioned, I'm going to go over the basics today, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the details that you'll find if you start doing some research on your own as far as specific conditions that animals live in. We'll just highlight that today. But we want to give you the option to look into that a little bit more. If there's a specific area of interest, I'm going to recommend some documentaries that you can even watch on Netflix today. So most of the meat, poultry, dairy, and eggs sold in American grocery stores and restaurants come from animals raised under intensive conditions on what we're going to call factory farms. Okay? And it is true that animals on these operations suffer pain and distress, oftentimes as a result of extreme confinement, bodily mutations without pain relief, and the denial of opportunity to behave normally. So here's the thing. We as consumers have the power to change this through the food choices we make every day. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So farmers and retailers will produce and sell what shoppers demand. So seemingly small changes like switching brands in favor of a more humanely raised product or consuming fewer animal-based products can make a big difference, okay? Not only in the lives of the animals, but also the environment and the lives of the farmers and your life and your health. And we'll talk about all of those things today. So we'll go ahead and get started with a couple of definitions, okay? And I actually thought this was a funny little cartoon. The lady on the left, it's her farm, and see all her little sheep are dressed up. She says, as you can see, we've gotten all the animals new winter gear. And the inspector's there. She's like, actually, we're here to certify that the animals are being treated humanely, not humanly. But I thought that was pretty funny. And it kind of leads into the point, or what does humane meat really mean? Okay, and the definition changes a little bit depending on the animals, but for nearly all farm livestock, it'll mean a life spent entirely on pasture, so like these sheep here, okay, with abundant room to move and engage in habits and tendencies specific to its evolutionary biology. So that's where it's going to differ for each species, but basically they should be free to roam around and peck at the ground and eat grass and that kind of stuff. Drink from a fresh water source, all of that. And that's what we're going to refer to as happy meat, okay? And you might actually hear that as a tagline for, happy cows come from California. And that is, a marketing tool right there. So just because someone refers to their meat as happy meat, and that's going to become kind of one of those catchphrases now, like gluten-free and, low carb and all that. Happy meat, I really think, is kind of going to maybe become one of those next things. So don't just take that at face value. You're going to have to do a little sleuthing to make sure. And we will give you those tools here in just a minute. So now that we've discussed, the definition of what we're calling humane meat, we'll also talk about ethical eating. And this is going to be different for everyone based on your values, okay? So with your values in mind, Ethical eating recognizes the moral consequences of our food choices. The ways our society raise, buy, and consume our food have direct effects on the earth, plants, and animals, and also the humans to make our food available. So eating ethically is under knowing and understanding all of these things and making your decisions based on that. Okay, and we will talk about some of these issues today so that you can make an informed decision on what is ethical eating for you. Okay. Here are the main reasons why people choose to eat humanely. And there could be a host of other reasons. And I left one off that I had already just mentioned, which was the farmers and producers of this food who really aren't able to make that much of a living off of it anyway. So, but the main reasons, I would say, top 3 reasons to eat humane for most people. Usually the initial reason people start eating humanely is compassion for the animals. And if you start to look in it, if you watch any of the documentaries that I recommend below, you're going to see that modern farming is a brutal business. So like I mentioned, neither the family farmers, the food workers, or of course the farm animals fare well within today's industrial agriculture system. And there's a couple documentaries about pig farming in particular, and it's a uniquely brutal form of torture that they inflict upon, a very intelligent animal, really. They cram them into slum conditions, basically, force pregnant sows into brutal gestation crates, create conditions just ripe for the abuse of animals. And cows are forced into similar crowded conditions on their own factory farms and made to eat diet of grain that makes them sick, and they have to wait around in their own waste. And all heard about chickens just raised for meat. They're usually crowded into impossibly dense conditions, and they often suffer from like skeletal problems and organ failure due to how fast they grow. So and then there's the laying hens, which are maybe even worse conditions than those. So this is kind of like, this is what's going on the farm, and then they're shipped off to the slaughterhouse, and that's even like the apex of factory farm suffering. So that's kind of like just the basics of what's going on. There's a lot more than that, and it's actually, it can be quite disturbing to some people when you look into it, which is why I just skimmed over it there. But like I said, I'm gonna give you resources at the end if you do want to watch that. Just be prepared. It will change your view on the food industry in some way. Number 2, nutrition. There's abundant evidence that grass-fed beef, for one, is far healthier than its industrial cousin. So I don't call it poetic justice, but the more compassionate and sustainable farming is, the more nutritious and healthful the food is. And I'll go ahead and I'll link some of those studies in the email that gets sent out along with the resource list, so that you can look into that a little bit. It is kind of interesting, and more studies are coming out on that. So, and then the third reason is sustainability. And we talked about this with last week with the kind of the organic, local, sustainable movement. This is the same. There's grossly wasteful use of the planet's natural resources to produce increasing quantities of this demand for meat, fish, dairy, eggs, and it just keeps threatening to increase and not decrease hunger and starvation, even though it seems like the low food prices at the store, and just like all the stuff that we have on our hand, it really comes at a cost. And that's the assault on the land that we're able to use to grow food and fresh water and clean air. And these are all resources that are already short, and we can make a difference by switching to organic, sustainable farming practices. And in fact, many independent scientists are joining environmentalists. So they're agreeing, like, hey, yeah, this is a problem. We need to call for a return to sustainable organic farming practices, not only for meat and those types animal products, but also, like we mentioned last week, with the fruits and vegetables and grains that we eat. So we as consumers, by following a diet that emphasizes efficiently and sustainably produced plant foods and that eliminates limits or eliminates factory farmed animal foods, we can help create a win-win situation for all people, animals, and the planet. So that's, kind of one of the little things that we can do is demand or only purchase products that are living up to our standards. And we'll talk about, how you can determine your standards here in a minute. And we'll actually just get into that. So there are a lot of terms out there, and we're going to talk about that. So, obviously advertising campaigns utilize clever marketing language such as all natural and farm fresh. And these are utterly meaningless phrases to trick you into thinking you're getting something you're not, okay? So if one is committed to eating humanely, one needs to be as judicious a customer as most of those companies don't want you to be, okay? I know many food labels are confusing and some are actually downright misleading. The best way for consumers to learn how the animals connected with a particular food item are treated is to visit the farm in question, okay? So unfortunately, this is not a realistic option for most people. The next best approach is to choose animal-derived food products that are certified by an independent third party and as coming from animals raised on high welfare pasture-based farms, okay? So there's some different seals that you might see on packages, and we'll talk about them like we did last week, in the order of like the most strenuous regulations and kind of like, the 100% there, and then we'll move down to lesser and lesser strenuous and what they mean, or if they mean anything. So this first thing you might see on a package is animal welfare approved, and it's this logo here. And I'll link this in the resource email you guys get, the actual website. It's a third-party certification program, and it has the highest standards for animal welfare and is the only multi-species humane food certification program that requires that all animals be raised outdoors on pasture or range, okay? So it's the only one that requires that. It's created and formally administered by the Animal Welfare Institute, okay? So that's a kind of like a watchdog group. The next sticker here is USDA organic. And sorry, I lost my place there. So this was also one of the stickers for our fruits and vegetables, right? And it means different things for the fruits and vegetables than it does for the meat, okay? And it's because the national organic regulations lack concrete animal welfare standards. So production methods may vary if this is on an animal product. They're regulated on fruits and vegetables, not on animals, okay? So, some of the organic farms may raise animals according to high welfare standards, and others, might only be marginally better than the conventional industry production, okay? Also on this, pasture access is required for ruminants, so like cows, but not poultry or pigs. Okay, so this sticker does not mean that they, if it's not a cow, they weren't required to have pasture access, versus the animal welfare approved sticker where all animals were required to have their entire life in the pasture, okay? Let's see. Oh, so there's actually a website, and I'll link this one as well, the Cornucopia Institute, and they have an organic dairy and egg scorecard, so you can identify the best farmers of kind of the local products for you in your area, and that's maybe what you should look at instead of this USDA organic sticker on meat. Okay, so basically this is pretty meaningless on meat. This next one, the Global Animal Partnership. Okay, this is an animal welfare rating marketing scheme. Okay, it's not a high welfare food certification program. There's a 5-step like scale that they use, and only steps 4 and 5 require pasture access. And there's some caveats with that. And standard steps for 1 through 3 are not sufficiently strong to be considered high welfare for animals. Okay, so this is more of a marketing one. So our best bets are going to be animal welfare approved, and then going to, instead of using the USD organic logo for meat, it's fine to use it to judge your produce. But instead of using this for meat, we're going to give you the link for the cornucopia place that has their list of legit partners in your area that you can get humane meat and meat products from. All right, so there are some labels to kind of beware of, meaning not like be scared and they're going to kill you, but just being aware of what they mean so that you're educated. And we talked about some of these last week. We just basically briefed what they meant in general last week, and this week we're going to chat a little bit more about what it means for meat products or animal products. Natural, you might see this label. Its claim merely means that the product has no artificial ingredients and was minimally processed. The claim has no relevance whatsoever to how the animals were raised. Okay, so they just have no artificial ingredients. No antibiotics, okay? Well, there are important human health reasons, of course, to limit this, the use of antibiotics to enhance farm animal growth, and also to serve as cheap compensation for unsanitary conditions. Food labels that assert that no antibiotics were used can also mean that treatment was intentionally withheld from an injured or sick animal in order to make in order to be able to market the food as antibiotic free. Okay, so this one can cut both ways. It could mean that the animals were living a happy life and they didn't need antibiotics, or it could be that they weren't and the antibiotics were withheld and then they suffered, of course. So with this no antibiotics, I would expect you would want to see it in conjunction with like your organic label and your animal welfare approved label. Like this, it should be assumed that this is antibiotic free. However, they would probably likely stick it on there as well. So unless you're seeing the no antibiotics in conjunction with other labels, then it's probably something just to avoid and look at as or to look at as marketing. Okay, as no better than the regular product next to it. And then, of course, there's going to be the no hormones. It's going to be similar to the no antibiotics. And it has some relevance in terms of animal welfare for dairy and beef products. But hormones are already produced by federal regulation for use in poultry, pork, and veal. So if you're seeing no hormones on the use of those products, it doesn't distinguish that product as any more humane. It's just announcing a fact that has to be done anyway. So, there's no reason that they need to put that. That's just marketing to catch. So your eye catches that brand versus the other, but it's really no different than that other brand. Okay, unless it has some of these other claims on it. And then the USDA process verified. Basically, this means USDA conducts audits to verify that the company is following its own standards in raising animals. So humanely raised can vary widely among producers, and all can receive USDA process verified approval for this claim. Okay, even products from factory farmed animals can carry the USDA PVP seal. All right, so this is basically just the USDA holding the companies accountable to whatever the companies said they were willing to do. Okay, and so there is no regulation on the terms in this or the standards, and the only thing is the accountability piece for the company from the USDA at their request. Okay. So if you see that, that's a label you might want to avoid. Okay. All right. So how do we put this all into practice? I have some ideas here, and maybe you guys have some of your own resources and ideas, and it'd be awesome if you would share. But like we talked about last week, we want to stay local and sustainable as possible for our health and animals and the plants and the environment. So I've listed the general ideas here, and then I listed some specifics locally here in San Diego. And then hopefully you guys can start to find some things in your own area or some nationwide providers if you can't find a local one, okay? First would be farmers markets, and the two ones that I really love in San Diego are the Mercado on Saturdays in Little Italy. And there's usually 2 to 3 vendors of meat products, all different types. Even sometimes there's a rabbit vendor and everything else there too. And there are a couple of fish vendors that have wild local fish. And then of course all the fruits and vegetables. There's a few organic stands within that. And what else is there that I really like? Oh, they have, of course the egg people. You have to be really careful when you talk to the different stands about their cage-free hens, because there is marketing with that too, right? Like, you have to ask them specific questions, like, are they allowed outside anytime they want, or do they have to? You need to ask specific questions, because I found that there is one of the 2 that claim that they're free-range hens, only one really is. So it's probably a little less regulated at the market. So you really do need to talk to the farmers and ask questions and get to know them. And then there's the Hillcrest Market on Sundays, which is another amazing market. And many of the same vendors there. So you wouldn't need to go to multiple farmers markets in 1 week. Typically, if you have more than one in your city, they usually make the rounds. So you can catch up with them at any of the markets throughout the week. Many vendors would actually have these CSAs, and we talked about them last week for the fruits and vegetables. And there's also meat CSAs, which means you go in with a group of other people, and maybe you end up purchasing a whole cow together or something. And that meat is divided up amongst you, or maybe some chicken, some cow, but it's all from the local farm. And our local one that does this is Sunrise Ranch. So once a month you could get a freezer box of meat delivered to your door, and that's what you could have for the month. And it would be whatever had been, had finished its growing process and been humanely slaughtered and butchered and ready to go for you. So that's kind of a cool way to try different things as well for maybe a little bit better a deal. And again, you can set that up. Usually at your farmer's market, you can go online and just Google meat CSA in your area, and you should have some things come up there. Okay. Butchers are awesome, and especially whole animal butcheries who really focus on the highest quality standards possible for the animals that they sell. And what whole animal butchery means is, for example, they would buy the whole cow, and then they would butcher that cow and they would sell all the parts, versus like your typical butcher, which would get in like multiple sections of like the hind end of the cow. So maybe they have like 6 hind ends of the cow. So it's coming from 6 different cows, hind ends. And they're butchering up those because they're just picking out kind of the most popular cuts of meat. So these whole animal butcheries, you're getting much higher quality meat, but you're also learning how to use the whole animal and really treat it with respect, and get everything from it as you possibly can. And they'll have great ideas of how to cook and prepare some of those more unusual cuts. And it'll be just really interesting to talk to them and learn where the animals came from, and know that animal lived a healthy life, and therefore it was healthier, and you're going to be healthier, and your karma is out there being healthy. So check those out, and again, Google that in your area and see. Not all butchers are the same. Just, some butchers are going to sell the regular factory farm meat. And then there's whole animal butcheries and ones that you might be able to find that are focusing. And a lot of times I found these butchers are, especially these like either whole animal ones or ones that are focused on local sustainable meats, humanely raised meats. They are a lot of times in restaurants, within restaurants themselves. So maybe, for example, we had a sausage restaurant here in town called the Linkery, and it's no longer open, sadly, but they actually had their own butcher there on site where they butchered for the restaurant, but then also had things for the public for sale. You could walk in and there was like a little case there and you could do orders. So look into that and think about where are your local sustainable kind of hip, humanely raised, humane restaurants right now, and do they have a shop or some offering like that? So that's another place you might look that's not on the list. Local grocery stores, of course, here. And one of our local ones, Steely Farms, they have a couple of the locations here in town. They actually have a farm outside of town where they raise the cows, raise the chickens, grow they have gardens with all the food, and that's what they sell at these grocery stores. And it's kind of like our own local version of Whole Foods. Like instead of outsourcing the farmers, they're growing it and doing it all themselves. So that's pretty cool. You might have something like that in your area. Another good place to look are people's co-ops, and I forgot to put that one on the list. And we do have a couple here in town, and that's going to be similar. It's going to be people bringing their stuff to market and their fresh produce. Again, you'll have to pay attention to the standards, and it won't be as highly regulated in places like that because it's just like local farmers and stuff. But if you talk to the people and you trust who you're getting it from, then that's an excellent way to stay local and support your neighbor and just really get to know and understand where your food came from, and it just makes it that much better when you're eating it and knowing it's going to nourish you. So, and then of course there are national grocery chain options. A couple that are kind of obvious ones: Whole Foods and Sprouts, I know, is now pretty nationwide, and they both have good options. There's probably like I said, my Vons down the street, it is a Safeway Vons store chain. They have a section with stuff in it too. So most of the big chains do now, but they also have a lot of clever marketing packages in the regular section too, or near the good section. So if they don't have what you want at your store, tell them. Let them know, like, hey, this is the kind of food I want to buy, and until you have it here, I'm going to go to this other store, or whatever you want to say your threat is. But you can demand that, and the more, like we mentioned earlier, the more demand there is, the more change that can come about, and that's all going to just start on the local level. And I think I've noticed a big change at my local store with more and more products coming. And I'll comment to the manager when I'm there, and he's like, hey, did you find everything today? I'll be like, yeah, it was really awesome. You guys added this other line of things. And so I let them know that I want more of that. So don't be afraid to do that. So I'm talking a little bit about being an educated consumer. We talked about all the labels and the fact that animal factories won't exist if consumers demand the animals raised for food are treated as with dignity and respect. Okay, so here are a few more ways that you can affect change by being an educated consumer. Okay, you can eat less meat, dairy, and eggs. All right, the average American consumes significantly more meat than is recommended. So in fact, the average meat eater will consume a total of 2,500 pigs, cows, chickens, turkeys, and sheep in their lifetimes. Okay, most Americans should be eating fewer animal products. So that means eat less meat, dairy, and eggs. All right, and we talk about getting enough protein in. Just pay attention to your serving sizes, all right, and where they're coming from, right? And I would tend to bet most males are probably eating more than enough, and most active females who have had some nutrition coaching are probably eating enough, but maybe a little too much. But yeah, most Americans in general could do with eating less meat, dairy, and eggs. Okay. You want to ensure your food choices. So we're in the middle one, always avoid. Ensure your food choices alleviate animal suffering rather than perpetuate cruelty. Okay. So there are definitely always some foods to avoid, and these foods, always involve significant animal suffering and should be avoided. Frog legs, foie gras, live sashimi, and shark fin soup. Okay, so if you consume animal products, buy from family farms where animals are not confined to cages or crates, and where they can roam freely and behave naturally. Okay, so if you are buying, some odd products, make sure that they were raised in a way that they were intended to live. Okay. When shopping for meat, dairy, and eggs, look for labels indicating the product is third-party certified for animal welfare. And we just talked about those labels, and we're going to give you some links to review those standards so that you can have that tool with you, okay? So certified label claims are defined by a formal set of publicly available animal care standards, which will link to you. Okay, compliance with the standards is verified by an independent audit. Okay, and you'll be able to visit the animal welfare approved to find out where these products are available. And I want to give you a few more resources, and the links aren't on this screen, but I will send the links to you in the email. Okay, so that you can just link and come up with your own plan and know what you're looking for. Okay, so this Human Eating Project. It's a website with information. Oh, sorry, Humane. I did like the sheep cartoon thing in the beginning. Okay, so the Humane Eating Project, it's a website with information and resources, and then also a restaurant app where you can search for restaurants in your area that focus on humane and local sustainable eating, and then you could try those out next time your coworkers want to go out to lunch. This eatkind.net is very similar to that restaurant app. It's for finding kind food near you for restaurants and grocers and that type of thing. Okay. Again, the animal welfare approved, that's another website to find farmers and food near you that are approved by this animal welfare site. Okay. And the Animal Welfare Institute has resources and info, a ton of resources and info, and they have a blog and research articles, and that's where I'll link you to a couple of the research articles that I mentioned before. And then this Cornucopia Institute is the one I mentioned, where you can search for organic dairy and egg scorecards on products in your area so that you can decide which ones that you want to use or not use. And then all of these are actually on Netflix right now. So these are, there's tons of food documentaries on there, but these are the 5 that focus on humane and sustainable and ethical eating. And they are Cowspiracy, the Food Inc., which you've probably heard of, that came out actually back in 2008. You know, these Farmageddon, Vegucated, and Forks Over Knives, these are pretty graphic documentaries, okay? Most of them are around an hour and a half long. But they really do get in there and show you the conditions that the animals live in and how the food is processed and what the outcome of the food is because of those 2 things. So definitely go into it with a thick stomach and an open mind, and thinking about the repercussions and the consequences of what you're seeing and how that might mold your values and beliefs. So basically, in summary, you know, hopefully today gave you the tools and information, and maybe even opened your eyes to some issues that you didn't know were issues, so that you can make educated decisions on how to eat humanely and in a way that's good for you and the environment and all the animals involved. If you have questions about, you know, what any of this means, or you need more resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us or on the Facebook group. I will include all the resources for this lesson in the email, and in addition to some others. And see, next week you guys are with Tina and her parents on the Humane Farm, and she's going to actually show you what a humane farm looks like. So there's nothing to be afraid of there. You'll see some piggies running around and eating and getting buttermilk baths and all that kind of stuff. So, and then I will be back with you the week after for, I think we're doing microbiome in a couple weeks. So that should actually be pretty cool. I'm excited about that one. So that is it for today, and I will see you guys soon.